Call to order the council budget workshop, April 16th, 2024, 5 p.m., 501 Main Street, Keokuk, Iowa. And I'm going to ask to stand to say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thanks. Okay, item number 2 is we are going to review the budget, and so I'm going to turn it over to Dave.
All right. I have the mic that doesn't light up, so I have to check it all the time. I did, yeah. Okay, so we're going to start with our budget worksheets. If you go about 12 or 13 pages back into your packet, you'll see papers that look different. These are the documents that are generated by the city software. They will all say budget worksheet at the top of them and then have the numbers filled in below. And these are the first set of documents are the revenues that we went over in a workshop. And if we call your attention to page 36 on those documents, the very last item on page 36 is the total revenues that will be reflected in the Department of Management reports, and I'll show you where that's at. It'll be on page 1, line 17. That total amount was $32,050,431. The next set of documents, still looking exactly the same, are the expenditures that we went over in another workshop. And on page 79, the very last page, it has the total expenditures that will be again reflected in our budget summary in the first set of documents on page 1, and that will be in line 30. The total expenditures were $35,042,460. If you go back to the first page in the packets, it'll say adopted budget summary on the top left-hand corner. And we'll go through those just real quick. On line 1, that has all the taxes that are levied on property across the city. And as you go across that line over to the column that says budget 2025, you will see that the total is $7,003,594. The next one down will be on line 5. Those are TIF revenues. If you go over to the TIF special revenue column, you'll see it's $1,566,868. And that line will also carry over to the column that says budget 2025 on it. If you go to line 6, it is the other city taxes that include the utility tax replacement. Starts out at $2,110,371. Special revenues are $1,758,733. Debt service is $285,745. And then the total in the budget 2025 column is $4,154,849. Licenses and permits is $74,850, and that's on line 7. And then there are $3,000 in the proprietary fund for a total of $77,850. Use of money and property under the general is $295,000. Special revenues is $4,512. Capital projects $70,500. Proprietary is $76,219. For a total under the budget 2025 column of $446,231. Line number 9, the intergovernmental, There's $2,738,761, $1,473,011 in the special revenues, $15,036 from TIF, $125,470 from debt service, $2 million under capital projects. That one kind of stands out. That's the brownfield grant. So the total is $6,352,278. Charges for fees and service, 26,800, 3,000. And then under the proprietary fund, that's $4,479,555, for a total of $4,509,355. And then the proprietary fund, that includes sanitation, water pollution control, sewer, and the bridge fund also. The miscellaneous account is line 12. There's 964,000 under general, 1,549,500 under the special revenues. That's another one that stands out. That's economic development grants and some miscellaneous under there. $5,000 under the permanent column. That's related to the perpetual care at the cemetery. 1,000 under proprietary for a total of 2,519,500. Then if you go down to line 17, it will total everything up for us. And as you go across, you'll see there's $12,540,534 in general, $7,528,945 and the special revenue, $1,581,904 in TIF, $3,571,874 in debt service, capital projects, $2,253,900. The permanent fund is 5,000. Proprietary funds are 4,568,274. And then the next line over is the total that I talked about earlier for our total revenues equaling $32,050,431. If we go down to line 18, this will get into the expenditure side. Under public safety, we have $5,992,452. That carries all the way over to the budget 2025 column. Public works is $1,006,564 out of general and $1,627,424 out of the special revenues for a total of $2,633,988. Culture and recreation is $2,707,810 out of general, $153,500 out of special revenues. And that total in the 25 column is $2,861,310. Community and economic development, $177,226 out of general, $1,641,500 out of special revenues. And then that totals over in 2025 column of $1,818,726. General government, $2,309,721 out of general, $60,000 out of special revenues for a total of $2,369,721. Debt service, you have to go over to the debt service column about mid-page under line 24. That's $3,446,404, and that will carry over to the 2025 column also. Capital projects, $6,008,400, and that carries over. The capital projects are showing up this year for mostly out of the bond fund, but some of that will be out of brownfield also. I should say the road bond fund. So if you go down to line 30, that totals everything up for us. Again, total general revenues or general expenditures, 12,202,273. Special revenues is 7,565,061. TIF, 1,328,769. Debt service, 3,446,400, excuse me, 404. Capital projects, 6,008,400. And proprietary funds, 4,491,553. So our total expenditures that we saw at the very last of our packet is reflected here at $35,042,460. If you flip over to the next page, this is the fund balance page. And this, if you go down to lines 9 through 12, this is an easy way to get a summary of all of the different funds across the board. So on line 9, all the way across, is the beginning fund that carries over from year to year. And then line 10 are the revenues from the proposed budget for 25. And then line 11 will be the expenditures. And then line 12 will be the ending fund balance at the end of the next fiscal year. So if we look at line 10 and line 11 under the general, you'll notice again from our previous page that the total revenues were 12,540,534, and the total expenditures are $12,202,273. That's on line 11. So that will increase our ending fund balance by about $300,000. Under the special revenues, we have $7,528,945 in revenues, and we have $7,565,061 in expenditures. So we will see a decrease under the special revenues. Just it's small, but a lot of that has to do with our grant matches. We've got a ton of grants and we're spending a ton of money on grant matches right now. The TIF special revenue account, the revenues are projected at $1,581,904, and the expenditures are projected at $1,328,769. So we should have a little left over in the TIF fund. Right now it's projected at $242,020. It looks like in the past that we've generally exceeded the TIF funding, but there is an there is an increase this year. The excess, I believe, has already been discussed by the council, and if there is excess, it should probably be applied to the long-term debt that is TIF eligible. So we've already spoke with Piper Sandler and then the city's bond council to determine which long-term debt is TIF eligible. They've identified those for us. And then they've also suggested which one of those bonds any excess would be best utilized for. So we have that information if anybody's interested in that. The debt service, again on line 10, the revenues are projected at $3,571,874, and the expenditures at $3,446,404 with a slight surplus there. That can also be applied toward any long-term debt that is eligible. Capital projects, this is where we look like we really take a shortfall, but we're not. The reason it looks short is because the $5 million road bond came in last year, and we will be expensing it this year. So if you look at the revenues for capital projects, it's $2,253,900. The majority of that is the brownfield grant. And then our expenses under that are estimated at $6,008,400. So that will reduce that ending fund balance significantly. And that is what makes us look like we have about a $3 million shortfall.
So is 5 million of that the road bond?
5 million is from the prior year, yes.
That's what I was
And
gonna say,
yeah,
from
and
the
the
prior
expense
year.
will be, yes,
So, but we'll have a portion of that expended throughout this next year. So that's the reason it looks goofy.
yes. Yeah. I think almost all of it will be expended through this next fiscal year. There's some that I believe will be coming soon. Let's see, the permanent account, that again is the perpetual care account that generally accumulates about 5,000 every year. So it'll show us at $517,271. So total government is 27,482,157. And then on the expense side, $30,550,907. And then they'll add in the proprietary funds, which again is water pollution control, sanitation, sewer and bridge. So the revenues for that are projected at $4,568,274. And the projected expenses are $4,491,553, which will increase our ending fund balance, again, by a small amount, but still an increase. So if you look at the grand total, these go back to those numbers again at the end of the city's software that show our total revenues at $32,050,431. Our total expenditures at $35,042,460, and we will have a total ending fund balance of $15,832,077. And then one other thing just to point out, our proposed tax levy did come in lower than when we had our hearing. It's at 25.0. I'm losing my page here. Is it 06? Yeah.
And where was that at the hearing?
It was at 28 something at the hearing. So I think some of the recommendations that we received from our bond counsel is that I know we've accumulated a lot of long-term debt recently, and they said that the city used to follow a strategy of applying any surplus TIF or proprietary funds that were applicable to that long-term debt. And apparently we got away from that. We actually at one time had a schedule of applying that, any excess to that long-term debt. And they strongly recommended that we get back in the routine of doing that. So if it is possible, that's one of the recommendations that came out. What's that? Okay. So Ehlers and Cooney is the city's bond counsel, and Piper Sandler is the finance bond company that we use. And they both are aware of it. They both have the schedule, and they've already identified everything that we could be applying, even if it's a small amount, any excess that we could apply to it, and then which ones would be most beneficial. So they have that ready to go for us. The rest of this is all the same numbers. I tried to simplify it as best I could. If anybody has any questions, I'll try to answer them now.
So we gave some significant raises last year, and I was curious, and then we had said that we were considering raises for middle management, and I was curious if we put those in this budget at all.
The managers are not included in the budget for any other additional raise other than what was already approved by council. Is there still discussion about?
Well, last year we gave some raises to like directors, and then we had said that we were going to give raises to managers, and I wasn't curious. I was curious if we did those same raises. I thought we had it during the initial conversation. We had taken those out.
Yeah, there is nothing calculated in the budget for additional raises to the management.
Okay.
Or to the managers. I'm not sure
And then we had,
specifically who you guys were discussing.
and then this
Is
is
that
just-
still on the table or?
I don't know. I'm only here for 2 more meetings. I'm just,
Okay.
I'm just covering the things that we had talked about, and we hadn't really made a decision or discussed further beyond just the initial conversation.
After we talked about, well, after we approved the raises for the department heads, we did mention just continuing to go down the line, but we never had another conversation after that. So it's up in the air.
I brought it up at the last meeting that we had that we talked about giving the managers that were still on that list. I think the mayor mentioned that we had never set an actual schedule.
Mm-mm.
It was just a discussion.
How many people were you guys talking about?
I think we're talking, I don't want to say the positions, ones that are like under the public works director, in between the union people and.
So the
managers.
parks, I mean, I'm not saying that we should do that. I'm just saying is that
Yep.
we had conversations about it, and I
Park,
don't want us to
cemetery.
be.
For a manager,
Sure.
manager-wise, there's 4,
Okay.
and then there's the 2 engineering techs. I don't know what you were going to include with that. We have I'm not sure on the contract for the airport, but that you have Parks, Bridge, Cemetery, Sanitation, and then street and vehicle maintenance, and then sewer department. And then the airport is, he's the manager of the airport, but
So we could continue that discussion if you guys want to. There is.
Well, we don't really have any time because we have to approve the budget.
Right,
on
we still have to
Thursday.
approve the budget, but we can have the discussion and then if
Maybe
there's,
we can just add it to a workshop later.
yeah, we can do that. And then we can also look at if there's any surplus in the levies that would pay for that. And then also it looks like historically when we do re-estimates, we generally come in a little bit under budget. So depending on the amount of people and the amount of the raise, it may be able to fit in there, just so you guys are aware.
So then, speaking of changes in positions due to attrition, I would make sure that the council thinks about, well, is this budget then reflecting the change with the one position having been absorbed into other positions?
Not yet. We have that on the next agenda for approval.
So the budget isn't reflecting that, though?
Correct.
Okay.
So
and
there will
then-
be, I think about a $48,000 savings there.
And then knowing that there's a few different positions that are coming up for retirement this year, I think that the council traditionally, from my understanding when I first came on, is that if it was budgeted, it was assumed that that position will automatically be filled. And that the council needs to be aware that that's what you've traditionally passed, and I mean, that you followed in the past, so that if you want that to be changed, you most likely need to make a statement on that just because it's budgeted does not mean that a position will always automatically be filled, because we obviously just lost a position. And so just knowing that you have a few retirements coming up.
And I would say there are a few positions that are budgeted currently that are not filled.
Correct.
So we're already
Mhm.
technically saying we're going to spend more than we are.
Any questions, anybody? So I guess, nothing on the budget? Okay, then I need a motion to adjourn. All those in favor say aye. All opposed? Go home.
Stay away.
think it's done